Our next presentation bears the title, Boring Ourselves to Life, How America's Entertainment-Saturated Culture Attacks Christian Values. Please welcome Samuel Robertson.
Kids cry, so their parents give them iPads. Teenagers are depressed, so they reach for their phones. Adults are exhausted. They reach for their phones too. Kids get home from school, the TV is waiting for them. Adults get home from work. Finally, rest. Well, after checking their feed for a minute, or two, or three. Much of American culture revolves around the desire for rest. Many Americans use our breaks engaging in entertainment. And why wouldn't we? It's so rewarding, so relieving, so comforting. We love rest, but paradoxically, we flood our brains with stimulation the second we are able to experience it. The experiences we most often have come from the small black boxes, the lenses, the machines. But these experiences most often lack meaning and purpose. Christians are meant to seek God in all things that we do, but we must ask ourselves, how much can we flourish when we spend more time with our screens than with our Creator? Although some argue that entertainment is not a threat to the Christian life and that boredom will not lead to human flourishing, I argue that boredom is far more spiritually beneficial than entertainment, providing room for a relationship with God to be manifested. What do we mean when we say that we are bored? Boredom is experiencing a lack of stimulation to the brain. It is a very familiar experience, one that very few would find pleasure in. Nevertheless, historically, boredom has been valued. The Greeks and Romans both practiced leisure, but not the leisure we claim to practice today. Their leisure was boring. That is, it would seem boring to us. Their leisure consisted of private philosophizing and creative thinking, with limited auditory and visual distractions. This is far from the leisure we practice as Americans. Our leisure is turning on the TV or scrolling through our phones as we lie on an exhausted couch. While the Greeks and Romans were interested in creating, Americans seem primarily interested in consuming. Americans have removed the boredom from leisure, and entertainment has replaced it. When I refer to entertainment, I do not refer to entertainment in all of its forms, but rather the forms that dominate American culture today. These forms are television and social media. Americans average 3 hours and 58 minutes a day of television and spend roughly 2 hours and 39 minutes a day on social media. These fairly new forms of media have an especially firm grasp on American youth. Teenagers in America average 4 hours and 29 minutes a day on social media alone. Americans so highly value our freedoms, but it seems as though we have allowed ourselves to become slaves to the media, slaves to ideas that we know are likely void of any truth, slaves to people without the fear of God in their hearts, slaves to people we don't even know. Americans, having embraced entertainment, have rejected the freedom of individual thought. Individual thought is under attack when engaging in entertainment because our perception of the truth is guided only by the man on the screen and the man behind the camera. As Neil Postman, media theorist and author of the book Amusing Ourselves to Death, observed, how television stages the world becomes the model for how the world is properly to be staged. Postman argued that television has the power to alter our perceptions of the truth. If this is the case, then what's to stop Christians from having our perception of the truth gained righteously through God's word from being altered? If we continue to allow ourselves to be so heavily engaged in entertainment, we will gradually begin to accept false narratives that attack Christian values. You may be wondering, isn't boredom laziness? And isn't laziness a sin? And in addition, the verse, idle hands are the devil's workshop, may come to mind. However, when I argue in favor of the practice of boredom, I do not argue for it to be the sole experience of a Christian's life, but rather an experience that follows a day of hard work. Even the early Christian monks, whose whole job was experiencing boredom and contemplation, were not without their mental and physical labors. In addition, it is strange to be concerned that boredom will lead to laziness when the alternative, entertainment, consumes a quarter of the average American's day. Would anyone argue that such consumption of television and social media is not laziness? Look, I know, boredom is uncomfortable. And entertainment is such a big part of our lives. How could we give that up? But the good news is, we don't have to be slaves to America's entertainment-saturated culture. The choice is ours to free ourselves from its grasp. We can do this by forcing ourselves to be bored. In order to do this, we must remove distractions such as television and social media. By doing this, we will remove the barrier that may currently be holding us back from truly experiencing God. Christian Americans must return to our values, freedom and truth. The freedom to experience individual thought and the truths that come from it. We must not let ourselves become so susceptible to the ideas of wicked men. We must trust God rather than men. We must return to the truth. We must return to leisure. We must return to boredom. Thank you.